Thanks, Chair. And just from the outset, can I wish Minister Burke the best after his incident yesterday, and I thank Minister Butler for coming in and substituting in for the question. Look, I think this is my third time coming in speaking on this issue. It's something I'm passionate about. I served as a county councillor for 6 years before I had the honour of being elected to this House, and I fundamentally have fundamental concerns about the direction of local democracy, and particularly in relation to this issue and the powers of the OPR, the Planning Regulator. I believe that one of the few remaining powers that local councillors have in city and county areas is their development plan, and I think it's the one thing that they can take ownership over. And it's great that they would have that say at local level in their own local electoral areas and in their counties and cities. That said, while I understand what the role of the OPR is, Minister, and I have numerous correspondence between myself, Minister O'Brien and Minister Burke in relation to this issue, and I can nearly predict the answer that you're going to read out in a minute. I understand the role of the regulator, but I do genuinely believe that there's overreach, and I don't think that when the office of the regulator was initially mapped out, that it was envisaged that he would go into each and every local area plan in such minute detail, and, as I've said here before, recommend dezoning of land that is serviceable. And I have instances in Cork County, in Fermoy, in Bantry. We have an instance which is regularly flagged here by Deputy Stanton, Deputy O'Connor in East Cork in relation to an outlet centre in Carrigtwohill, and that for me is the most, I suppose, the best example of the OPR's overreach. And just to give the House an idea of what that relates to, on 2 occasions Cork County Council took legal action against the Minister in relation to the OPR's recommendations, and on both occasions Cork County Council were vindicated. Yet, despite being vindicated on 2 separate occasions and 2 separate legal cases, the OPR still continued to recommend to the Minister that he would put a halt to this potential outlet centre in East Cork. Now, as I understand it, if a court makes a judgment, if that judgment is stood over not once but twice, I don't see how the OPR could put the Minister in such a position that he would still continue to recommend that project be shelved. I think it's put the Minister in a very difficult position, actually. Now, thankfully, in that situation, the Minister did, on foot of receiving his own advice, did side with the County Council, essentially, and did not enforce the OPR's recommendation. But that said, how did the OPR get into that situation where not once but twice he basically went against 2 legal judgments? And as I said, I think it's reprehensible that he would put the Minister in that position. I understand why the OPR is there. I understand why we have to be careful about land zoning and the whole lot with the history we have in the state, be it from the Moriarty Tribunal or the Mahon Tribunal. But for me, the OPR isn't the police officer. If there are any allegations of any impropriety or any type of illegal activity, for me it should be SIPO or some other body that would be legislated for, that would enforce any difficulties in relation to zoning. So I don't think it's a role that was initially envisaged for the OPR. So look, Minister, I suppose my rant is the same. It's about the OPR overreaching. In the case of Carrigtwohill in particular, I think ill-advising the Minister in that particular situation. I do know that the Minister has, not always agreed with the OPR, and I've asked numerous PQs about it, and I've gotten the stats on that. But it comes back to me fundamentally about local democracy in action. And if we don't leave these powers to councillors, then what are councillors there for at all? Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. And Minister, you have 4 minutes to reply.
Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach. I'm taking this topical on behalf of Minister Darragh O'Brien and Minister Burke, and I want to wish Minister Burke the very best as well. I would like to thank Deputy O'Sullivan for his question on the activities of the Office of the Planning Regulator concerning county and city development plans. And probably a lot of the response I'm going to give you have heard before. The Planning and Development Act 2000, as amended, gives the OPR a statutory basis to carry out 3 main functions. One core function of the OPR is the independent assessment of all local authority and regional assembly statutory plan making processes. This includes county and city development plans, local area plans and regional spatial and economic strategies. The OPR provides observations during the drafting of statutory plans. In cases where the OPR finds that a local authority's plans are ultimately not consistent with relevant regional or national policies, the OPR can recommend the use of ministerial powers of direction to bring plans back in line with statutory requirements and best practice. If the Minister does not agree with the recommendations of the OPR, the Minister must prepare a statement of reasons for this decision, which is then laid before both houses of the Oireachtas. Recommendations issued by the Office relate to clear breaches of the relevant legislative provisions of the national or regional policy framework and/or the policy of government, as set out in ministerial guidelines under Section 28 of the Act. As such, the Planning Authority is required to implement or address recommendations made by the Office in order to ensure consistency with the relevant policy and legislative provisions. The Minister's powers pursuant to the S31 process are invoked on receipt of a notice issued by the OPR in accordance with Section 31AM8 of the Act. Since its establishment in April 2019, the OPR has assessed and evaluated 22 city and county development plans to adoption stage. Of the 22 adoption plans, 13 have been the subject of an S31AM8 notice letter from the Office to the Minister of State for Planning and Local Government, recommending that the Minister issue a draft direction. All 13 draft directions have been issued by the Minister. The Office has to date recommended that the Minister issue final direction notice letters on 12 of those, with the outstanding one due to be issued by the Minister by mid-January 2023. To date, final S31 directions have been issued on 7 development plans. The remaining recommendations are under consideration by the Minister. The planning issues which were subject of the 7 S31 final directions issued by the Minister on county development plan reviews can be summarised generally as follows. Excessive and inappropriate land use zonings for a variety of land uses, often in peripheral locations at a remove from settlements, are subject to a number of specific site constraints, including flooding, access and servicing. The inclusion of conflicting wind energy development policies, prohibitive policies related to the banning or limiting of certain types of development, flood risk management. Deputy, there has been 4 occasions when the Minister has decided not to include in all of the recommendations made by the Office in issuing either a draft or a final direction. These are listed as follows. The S31 draft direction on the Kerry County Development Plan 2022 to 2028 did not issue on one of the recommendations made by the OPR relating to renewable energy targets. The S31 final direction on the Cork County Development Plan 22 to 28 did not issue on 2 of the recommendations made by the OPR relating to retail planning policy, which you refer to. The S31 final direction on the Westmeath County Development Plan 21 to 27 did not issue on one of the recommendations made by the OPR relating to renewable energy targets, specifically wind. And finally, Cathaoirleach, the S31 final direction on the Laois County Development Plan 22 to 28 did not issue on one of the recommendations made by the OPR relating to renewable energy targets, specifically wind energy.
Thank you very much, Minister. Deputy, you have 2 minutes for supplementary.
Thanks, Minister. And yeah, look, it's a lot of the same information I would have had in the previous occasions that I would have brought it up. And look, I'm not trying to undermine the OPR here. I'm just saying, you know, in the overall argument, I know the OPR has a job to do, but genuinely, like, the majority of us, I can't speak for everybody, most of us here would have started as county councillors and city councillors, and we would know, how important it is locally to our constituents that were involved in this process. And I think the way at times that the OPR has acted has, actually been counterproductive to seeing local democracy in action. And look, I note all the other counties and development plans that are referenced here, but I can speak to Cork. And Cork City Development Plan is still actively being scrutinised by the Minister's Department, pending those recommendations being implemented or not. And I know the Minister has said he obviously can't speak to those. I understand that. But I know of those 9 items that are listed in the City Council plan, for example, at least 3 of them that I'm aware of are on serviced land. And the Minister, Darragh O'Brien, has himself said previously that no serviced sites should be dezoned. He has said that on the record, and I can flag 3 separate occasions in the City plan, which is yet to be adjudicated on, where that hasn't happened. And I'll just finish by saying, as I said, I don't want to be like a broken record, but particularly in relation to Carricktool, and it's the one that really sticks with me, because I think that the OPR's recommendation put the Minister in a very, very tough spot, because twice that court case was quite clear, and it was quite clear that the OPR was defeated essentially in what he was proposing. Yet he still went on to recommend to the Minister that he would implement his recommendation. And for me, that, like, there should be massive alarm bells ringing at that. Look, as I said, I know you can't comment on the live issues that are there, but I do believe that the future of local democracy as we're going forward is on the line here, and I think that now is the time to question it.
Minister, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Deputy. And I know you have raised this on several occasions. So just to conclude there had been 4 occasions, as I said, where the Minister had decided not to include all of the recommendations made by the Office. And they were in relation to Kerry, Cork, Westmeath and Laois. And for each of the 4 listed above, the Minister has prepared and submitted a statement of reason to both Houses of the Oireachtas as to why he had not agreed with the recommendations of the OPR. As you said, 7 development plans are still undergoing the review process and will remain subject to evaluation and assessment by the OPR. But I do think it is worth remembering that the Office of the Planning Regulator was formally established in April 2019 on foot of recommendations made by the Tribunal of Inquiry into certain planning matters and payments, the Mahon Tribunal. The appointment of an independent planning regulator empowered to oversee the planning system in Ireland was one of the key recommendations of the Tribunal. Since its establishment, the OPR is a key part of our national and regional planning infrastructure. It is providing a valuable role in ensuring that the process and formulation of city and county development plans are consistent with national planning policies. The Office of the Planning Regulator is an independent body tasked with ensuring local authorities' plans are consistent with relevant national and regional planning policy objectives. The Minister is empowered to direct a planning authority to take specified measures in relation to a development plan, further to a recommendation of the OPR. In the case where the Minister does not agree with the recommendation of the OPR, he must prepare a statement of reasons, and that is what he has done on 4 occasions when he hasn't agreed in relation to some of the recommendations from the OPR. But certainly I will pass on your concerns to the Minister, and as I said, I know you have raised this several times. Thank you, Deputy.